אני הולך על המדרכה.
אתה מאוד אדיב.
הבובה שלי יפה.
ואני אוהב זלולת.
זלולת? מה זה זלולת?
Zlolet means junk food in Hebrew. Don't you know?
No. How would I know?
You are right. How would you know? Zlolet is a new Hebrew word, just added to the Hebrew vocabulary.
Added? By who?
Let me tell you. Many words are added every year to the thousands of words that make up our rich Hebrew language. In order to understand the development of the Hebrew language, let us embark on a fascinating journey. A journey that will take us through 4 main periods in the development of our language. So what do you think? Let's get going.
לך לך, לך לך, מארצך וממולדתך ומבית אביך אל הארץ אשר אראך, אל הארץ אשר אראך, ואעשך לגוי גדול, ואעשך לגוי גדול, ואברכך וגדלה שמך, והיה ברכה, ואברכה מברכך ומקללך האור, ונברכו בך כל משפחות האדמה, ונברכו בך כל משפחות האדמה, ונברכו בך כל משפחות האדמה.
מה זה? איפה אנחנו? Where are we? What is this place?
We are in Ur-Kasdim. The year is 1948 BCE.
That is almost 4,000 years ago.
Yes, this is the year when our forefather Abraham was born, and this is when the Hebrew language actually slowly started. Abraham was the descendant of an ancestor by the name Ever, and when Abraham moved to the land of Canaan, he was called Abraham the Hebrew. Because Ever also meant from the other side of the river, Abraham HaIvri spoke the language that was called Hebrew.
The language that Abraham brought with him slowly began to develop and integrate many new words that were added from languages spoken by other people and other nations during our forefathers' travels. Hebrew was part of these Semitic languages, which over time all disappeared except for Hebrew. It was the only language that survived.
The first period of the Hebrew language is called the Biblical language, and it started over 3,000 years ago, and that was just the beginning of Hebrew.
Wow, this is fascinating. So words like Adama, Eretz, Har, La, Yam, Ani, are all these ancient words from the time of our forefathers?
Yes, by the end of the first period, which lasted until the destruction of our first temple and the exile to Babylon, there were over 8,000 words in the Hebrew lexicon.
שיר למעלות, אשא עיניי אל ההרים, מאין יבוא עזרי. תזרימי השם עושה שמיים וארץ, אל יתן למות רגליך, אל ינום שומרך. הנה לא ינום ולא ישן שומר ישראל, השם שומרך, השם צילך, על יד ימינך. יומם השמש לא יככה וירח בלילה, השם ישמורך מכל רע, ישמור את נפשך, השם ישמור צאתך ובואך מעתה ועד עולם, מעתה ועד עולם.
I see thousands of people coming from far away. So where are we now? What period is this?
The year is 538 BCE. Jews are returning to Zion from the Babylonian exile.
Oh, so Akadosh Baruch Hu, Ilanot, Bar Mitzvah, Atid, Vizman, all these words belong to the second period of the Hebrew language?
Yes, this period is called Hebrew of the Sages, Ivrit shel Chazal or Lashon HaChachamim.
The children of Israel spoke the Hebrew language of the sages when they made pilgrimages to the Second Temple, or when the Maccabees fought the evil Greeks.
Rabbi Akiva spoke to his wife Rachel, and Bar Kokhba commanded his warriors during the revolt against the Romans in this language. The Hebrew of the sages was very much influenced by the Aramaic that the exiles from Babylon brought with them, and later the Greek rule in Israel had a great impact on Hebrew during this period of time.
About 8,000 new words were added during this period, and this was the second layer in our language.
Our sages were known for creating many words that were synonym of words created by our forefathers during the previous period. Et became Ilan, Arucha became Seuda, Et became Zman.
It is difficult to describe Hebrew today without words like Ima, Abba, Halavai, Itztarion, Sandalim.
Many holy books were written during this time, the Mishnah, the Talmud, and many other writings which glorify the treasures of the Hebrew language to this day.
יפה נוף משוש תבל, קריה למלך רב, לך נכספה נפשי, מפתי מרב, לך נכספה נפשי, מפתי מרב. המון רחמי נחמר, כי אזכרה כדם, כבודך אשר גלה, ונבך אשר חרב, כבודך אשר גלה, ונבך אשר חרב.
Oh, this song sounds a bit sad to me. Where are we now? What's happening?
You're right. A new and very long period in the life of our people began. The Romans burned and destroyed our second temple. Jews went into exile, and with them, their language went into exile too. The Hebrew language entered the period of the Middle Ages, the medieval times.
מה קרה לעברית?
For almost 2,000 years, Hebrew was no longer used as a spoken language. Hebrew remained only the language of prayer and Torah studies, and it was used mainly by rabbis, scholars, and poets.
During the long exile, thousands of books were written in Hebrew in various fields: science, philosophy, religion, poetry, medicine, mathematics, and grammar. But the spoken language became dormant. Although during this period the spoken Hebrew language went into a long slumber, the written language flourished.
A great deal of Hebrew poetry was written. New prayers and literature were added to the Hebrew language treasury. Many new grammar rules were adopted from the Arabic, and many words were added to the Hebrew language.
Jews were scattered throughout the diaspora. They stopped speaking Hebrew, and since they wanted to be welcomed in these foreign lands, they adopted the language of the places where they now lived.
In many of these countries, the dominant language was Arabic, and so Arabic became a very influential component of Hebrew. During this long period of time in our history, a fertile ground was created for the growth of Hebrew grammar.
And since Arabic was then influenced by the linguistic cultural conduit of the Greek culture, we had the privilege to receive words such as teatron, filosofia, ומוזיקה to our Hebrew language.
Later on, other European languages managed to fold into the Hebrew language, and so some Spanish, French, and German words were added to our vocabulary.
About 3,000 words were added during this time. About half of them were words invented or renewed by Rashi alone.
So words such as matana, dibur, mazel tov, censura, pantomima are all words from that period.
Yes, these words join in and enrich the growing Hebrew vocabulary.
כמו הנביאים הקנאים לשם, הוא קינא לפועל ולתואר ולשם, ובחצות העששית בחלונות היה רושם במילונות תילי תילים, מילים יפות, מילים אפות, מתגלגלות מן הלשון. אליעזר, מתי תשכב לישון? הן קומתך כמעט 2000 שחר, והעברית אשר חיכתה 2000 היא תמתין לך עד בוא השחר. אליעזר בן יהודה, יהודי מבדח, מילים מילים, מילים מילים, הוא בדה ממוחו הקודח. נמה העברית 2000, נו אז מה, הבה נעירנה ונמציא את היוזמה, את המגהץ, את הפצצה, את הריהוט. בקצה נוצה בכתב רהוט, כתב כרובית, כתב גלידה, כתב את כל מילון בן יהודה. ועוד הוסיף מילים לברוא, ונוצתו המהירה לא נחה, והשפה גדלה ולא הכירה את מראה דמותה, את מראה דמותה בבוא השחר. אליעזר בן יהודה, יהודי מבדח, מילים מילים, מילים מילים, הוא בדה ממוחו הקודח.
Oh, this song sounds great. And I think that now we are moving to the next period of Hebrew, right?
אז איפה אנחנו עכשיו? לאן הגענו? Where are we now? What year is this?
We are now in Eretz Yisrael. We are near the end of the 19th century. Welcome to our last stop of our journey. This period is truly fascinating.
Fascinating? Why?
Something very special and unique happened to our language during this time. There is no other case in human history in which a language that was not spoken at all by native speakers became a national language used in a multi-systemic way, all within a period of only a few decades.
So how did this happen?
All this happened because of a stubborn young man named Eliezer ben Yehuda. Eliezer immigrated to Eretz Yisrael and fought to renew the language as part of the Zionist move. The Jews who immigrated to Eretz Yisrael during this period spoke the languages that they brought with them from exile. Yiddish, Turkish, German, Ladino, Arabic, Russian, and English are only some of the languages that were spoken in the new Jewish state.
Jews were not interested in learning Hebrew, the language that in their opinion should remain Lashon HaKodesh, the language suitable only for prayer and sacred studies.
So what happened? What did Ben Yehuda do?
He kept working hard to convince people that Hebrew will unite them. He opened a Hebrew school. He started to write a Hebrew newspaper and a Hebrew dictionary. Eliezer worked hard expanding the Hebrew dictionary. He invented and innovated about 250 new Hebrew words.
He established educational institutions that taught Hebrew, and together with his colleagues, the Hebrew dictionary grew longer and became richer and richer by the day. Eliezer's vision to connect the language of the Bible, the language of the sages, and the language of the Middle Ages together with the modern Israeli Hebrew was a quick and overwhelming success. The languages were fused together with the regeneration of Hebrew.
And the modern Hebrew of the land of Israel was born. Even today, the Hebrew language continues to renew itself all the time. Born, and the Hebrew language continues to flourish and develop.
Jordan, do you think that if we met a child from the biblical period today, we could have spoken in Hebrew and understood each other?
Well, yes. You would probably understand him, but I'm not sure if he would understand you.
Why?
Well, telephone, משחקי video, autobus, מחשב, television.
Oh, yes, I see what you mean.
Shalom משגרירות ישראל בקנדה. Greetings from the Embassy of Israel in Canada. Today is Tu Bishvat. In Jewish tradition, the birthday of New Year for trees. Today we celebrate the growth of trees, the blossoming of nature, and their importance to humankind. Today we also celebrate the Hebrew language, and just as humankind and nature are intertwined, so is the connection between the Hebrew language and the Jewish people.
Just like we see around us trees in the winter that we know will soon blossom and grow, so too Ivrit, a language once not really spoken, continued to grow and expand through people speaking it and students like you learning it. Our greatest wish is for us to continue to enjoy the trees and all the good they give us, and that Hebrew will continue to grow, glorify, and nourish our wonderful Jewish culture. Tu Bishvat Sameach, Yom Safa Sameach.
השקדיה פורחת ושמש